Yo, it's your boy Kai, aka Fervent Alchemist, and I'm back again with another deck tech. And right quick, before we get into anything, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the channel, tcgplayer.com. If you want to support me here over on the channel, make sure you click that link below in the description or in the comments and support your boy over here on the channel. And now, let's get into it. Dragonlord Ojutai is a 3 white-blue legendary creature, Elder Dragon. Sitting at a 5/4 flying, Dragonlord Ojutai has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Whenever Dragonlord Ojutai deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of those into your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. This looks familiar. That text is actually anticipate. Like the idea behind this deck, I'm trying to make this more of a control deck. I made this really a control deck because there's a lot of asymmetrical stax pieces out there. And I figured that I could play regular cEDH while my opponents just play high power or low power. This deck's been through many iterations. As so far, the core has been the same. All the stax pieces in this deck do not hinder the strategy at all. There might be like 1 or 2 things, but it's not really that important. Dragonlord Ojutai is chosen as the card advantage engine here because this just gets around any kind of card draw hate. It's also on a 5/4 flying body, which is kind of crazy. So let's get into the asymmetrical stax effects. We got Dove in Hand of Control, which is 2 in the blue. Artifact, instant, and sorcery spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast. This is a really cool card. It's more like a one-sided Thalia almost, because artifact, instants, and sorceries are mostly what your opponents are looking to cast. It excludes enchantments and everything else, like every other non-creature spell or even creatures, but that's usually enough to slow everybody down. And it has the -1 ability until your next turn to prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent and opponent control. So if somebody has a Crom and we're not able to block, you can -1 target the Crom, and Dovid is safe for the whole turn cycle. We got Narset Part of the Veils. This is a asymmetrical card draw effect that actually stops card draw. Like I said, Ojutai is willing to block. So Narset Part of the Veils is 1 blue. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. That's excellent. And then it also has the card advantage engine of -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. You got Karn the Great Creator. Activated abilities of artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated. That +1 usually just snipes out Chrome Moxes and Mox Ambers and Lotus Petals and things like that. It just turns them into 0/0 creatures, which die as a state-based effect. More asymmetrical stax effects. We got Drannith Magistrate. Your opponents can't cast spells anywhere other than their hands. Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. You're seeing a theme here. Each opponent can't. That's the 3-word theme for this deck. Each opponent can't. Sanctifier of Envec. This is a relevant piece that does not hurt us. So it says pro red and black. We don't play red and black. And when it enters the battlefield, exile all cards that are black and red from all graveyards. Well, if you discarded a Breach earlier, say goodbye. Say goodbye to that Breach. If you have a Dockside in the graveyard, say goodbye to that too. Any other black cards you were looking to play off of a Yawgmoth's Will, goodbye. Like, that's really cool. It's just a really cool, like, white, one-sided effect because we're not playing black or red, so just deletes everything that's black or red from every graveyard. If a black or red permanent spell or a card not on the battlefield would be put into the graveyard, exile it instead. This exiles pretty much mostly anything. Pretty much anything an opponent could want that's black or red. Another asymmetrical stax effect, Aven Mind Censor. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. This also works through opposition agent. If your opponent has an opposing opposition agent and they choose to search an opponent's library, they only get to look at the top 4. Sacrifice Ranger Captive Eels. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. Again, another one. The only one drop in this deck is Esper Sentinel, so you're not going to benefit much of anything by searching with Ranger Captain. You got Dahlia Heretic Cathar. This is a card that not a lot of people seen. They're usually used to playing the 1 in a white Dahlia, which makes non-creature spells cost 1 more, but that also hurts us, so I'm not playing that card. Creatures in non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. This is I guess it's kind of a synergistic piece with another card in this deck. It says creatures and non-basic lands that creatures in non-basic lands enter tapped. So if somebody tries to go for a Kiki combo, all those creatures will enter tapped. If they try to play a fetch land, the fetch land will enter tapped, and they try to fetch for something else that has a basic land type, it'll enter tapped as well. So they're basically time walked off of 2 turns from land drop. All right, let's go over some of these sorceries here. We got Personal Tutor. This is just a good top deck tutor. This deck is turn based, so you're going to be playing a lot of extra turns here. So you got Capture of Jingzhou, you got Temporal Manipulation, Time Warp, and then you also have just a bunch of like cool sorceries here. There's also one of the win conditions is actually Approach of the Second Sun, but I'll get into that later. We got Gift of Estates. This one searches for 3 plains cards. So with Gift of Estates, the wording on this actually says, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for up to 3 plains cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. So with Gift of Estates, you can pick up a plains. You can just pick up a basic plains. This deck has a lot of basic plains in it. You can also pick up a Hallowed Fountain, which is both a plains and an island. You can pick up a Tundra, which is both a plains and an island. As long as there's an opponent that controls more lands than you, you get 3 lands to hand. Sphinx's Decree. This is another asymmetrical This is an asymmetrical sorcery. This is a card that nobody is playing. And I think this is kind of crazy. This card is like 10 cents, 32 cents in foil. Like, nobody's playing this card. This card is excellent. Each opponent can't cast instant or sorcery spells during their player's next turn. So what this means is, once you pass the turn, on your opponent's turn, they can't play any instants or sorceries, but your other opponents can. So if they're trying to play any spells on their turn, so say if they're like, oh, I'm gonna try to go for a win here, your opponents can still cast instants or sorceries to interact with them. And once their turn passes and the other opponent tries to go for it, then that player whose turn just passed, that opponent whose turn just passed, they can use their interaction to interact with that person. So now you have a cascading like effect here where everybody's going to use their interaction to interact with everybody else, and you don't have to use yours. Pretty cool, right? This also makes it so you have the final say on pretty much any of their spells, because they can't cast any instants to interact with you, and they also can't cast any sorceries as well. So if they're trying to play their like Beseech the Mirror or Culling Ritual, they can't cast that at all. We got one of these cards here, which is really cool actually, Lorien Revealed. It is a 3 blue sorcery. It just says draw 3 cards. It's a simple card. The reason why we're playing it is because sometimes this deck gets hungry for cards. Sometimes you just don't have access to Ojutai. Maybe got killed maybe once or twice or something like that. Or maybe you just have a lot of mana and nothing to do with it, and you can just hit the gas on Lorien Reveal, draw 3 cards. And also, if you don't have enough mana, this one actually puts an island into your hand. This is island cycling. You can just search your library for an island card, which means you can get a basic island, or you can get a Hallowed Fountain or a Tundra. So you're starting to see some of the flexibility here. You got Approach of the Second Sun. Approach of the Second Sun is a win condition in the deck since you see a ton of cards. And we're also playing a bunch of extra turn spells. Then we got Seagate Restoration. Of course, we're not playing Adnos, we're in Azorius. Like, who cares about the curve? This is also another land drop. And of course, we got a bunch of like counterspell interaction here. Angel's Grace is a really good control card because you can't lose the game. It's 1 white, final say, you can't lose the game, they can't win. Yeah, it's just GG here. You're playing control. You usually want to have the final say in most of your spells. Commandeer is a 5 blue instant. You may exile 2 blue cards from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Gain control of target non-creature spell. You may choose new targets for it. So if somebody plays like a 1 ring, you can exile 2 blue cards from your hand, cast Commandeer, take the 1 ring. Anything like a Ristic Study, a Necropotent, a Adnaz, like I don't know why you would take an Adnaz, but it could save the game. You can just go 1 deep, take 1 card, and they don't get an Adnaz. There's so many things you can take with Commandeer. We got Nexus of Fate. This is just another extra turn effect. Ideally, you can actually Nexus of Fate loop with I think it was Thought Lash. This was a combo with Thought Lash because I would exile my library and then go to Pound Town with Ojutai and just loop Nexus of Fate over and over and over again. That is one thing you can do. I decided not to do that anymore. It's just a really decent extra turn effect. And you might be wondering, why are all these cards so expensive? Somehow, some way, I always end up with at least 6 or 7 mana. And I think it's mostly because I slow the game down so much that I'm able to hit land drops and gain advantage and play all these rocks and do all this different stuff. I get Ojutai out, I get all the card selection from Ojutai. I think it's pretty decent. And you might ask, like, why? Why does this CMC so high? Well, you have to be patient when you play this deck. This is a control deck. It requires patience. And as you see from the description here, your greed exceeds your skill. You have to not be greedy when you play this deck. When I built this deck, I realized that, like, there was a lot of greedy players out there, and their greed is, it's their greed is overwhelming, and it's overshadowing them as a good player. And I just wanted to make a statement on that by building a deck that's, a really good control deck and takes advantage of greedy players. Got Blight Obedience. It's a great asymmetrical stacks piece. Like I said, asymmetrical. Counterbalance, asymmetrical stacks piece. Back to basics. This is the reason why we're running. It's the reason why we're running so many basics. It's the reason why we're running High Tide. It's, asymmetrical. It does hit some of our non-basics, but that's okay. It hurts them more than it hurts us. At the most, we're tapping like 4 to 5 lands a turn. You usually want to prioritize basic lands when you play this card, or before you even play the card. You have to think about your turn and think about what you're going to fetch. If you really need the dual land, go ahead and grab it. You just want to stay in the game and make sure you keep up with everybody else, but keep back to basics in the back of your head. And that concludes the video. I know this is a really short one, but I've been playing this deck for maybe about a month or so. I just wanted to share it with you guys before I take it apart. But this is a really fun deck. I've actually won more games than I would like to admit. So I really love this deck. Back when I was running the deck more frequently, I was running Paradigm Shift, Thassa's Oracle, Jace, and Thought Lash. It did help me close out more games, so I would probably consider that if you plan on building this deck. I haven't played many games with Approach of the Second Sun, but those are options there that you have, and then you can swap and mix and match to your leisure. But if you like the video, make sure you give me a big old subscribe and a thumbs up, and I'll catch you later in the next one. Peace.